Good evening. They have been speculated about and argued over for months, but tonight domestic vaccine passports really are coming, in Scotland at least. It will very soon be a case of no jab, no thanks. In something of a surprise announcement, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon put nightclubs, football stadiums and other venues on notice that they will soon only be able to admit the double jabbed. It's not so surprising once you hear the figures Miss Sturgeon quoted. In the past week, case numbers have almost doubled, up 80%. In 4 weeks, they've gone up fivefold. And what could be behind the rise? Well, Scottish schools are back already. The venues, which will have to bring in vaccine passports if the Scottish Parliament agrees, are important to Scotland's economy, Miss Sturgeon said, but not essential. Making them safer would benefit everyone.
Morning, guys. When you come, use a hand sanitizer as you're coming in, please. Mr. Dalton's got masks.
COVID cases in Scotland have shot up and up since schools reopened here 3 weeks ago.
That's great. Thanks very much for letting us know. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Is that another pupil isolating?
Yeah, one more.
How often is this happening?
Every morning, every day.
Masks are mandatory at all secondaries here, but some schools like St Roch's are also taking extra measures voluntarily to keep the virus out.
We have the staggered intervals, staggered lunch times to minimise the number of people gathering at any one point in time.
And yet COVID still somehow finds a way. In just a week, case numbers across Scotland doubled.
I just caught COVID a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I'm just back this week, so...
How was it?
Oh, not good.
Today, Nicola Sturgeon has announced her response to this escalating problem: vaccine passports.
We consider that to help protect individuals and the country as a whole and reduce the risk of further restrictions being necessary, those over 18 who are eligible for vaccination should be required to show that they have received both doses.
You'll need a vaccine passport to enter a nightclub in Scotland, but also for unseated indoor live events with more than 500 people in the audience, outdoor events like concerts with more than 4,000 in the audience, and any event with more than 10,000 in attendance, which would include football matches. But nightclub owners are sceptical this can work in practice, and furious given they only reopened in Scotland last month.
We just get back open after 520 odd days closed, and we've reorganised things with our suppliers, with our landlords, and now we're going to have to go back and do that again because the numbers that we thought we were going to be able to get in have now been halved.
This is also about incentivising young people. Almost half of 18 to 29-year-olds in Scotland still haven't been vaccinated.
I've got the vaccine, I'm double jabbed, but I do think it's a wee bit of an infringement against people's rights.
It means more people take the vaccine and it's a good thing.
To encourage those young people?
Yeah, and to protect us all.
I've had some people who are sort of sat on the fence and not sure about it.
Do you think this will push them towards getting a vaccine?
I think it will, and it will push them towards making an informed decision.
The number in hospital is also rising here, but it's proportionally lower than before the vaccine. Scientists say this is an argument for vaccine passports.
The more people don't get severely ill, the more people don't end in hospital. And that is exactly what kind of that additional motivation, the vaccine certification and the big risk events where lots of people could get infected are important to mitigate.
It's England schools that go back tomorrow, but with no requirement for masks. And so many will be paying close attention to what has now unfolded north of the border. Peter Smith, News at 10, Glasgow.
Well, if the Scots are to be the first to have vaccine passports, then 500,000 people in England with weak immune systems are to be the first to be offered a third dose of the coronavirus vaccine. They include those who have leukemia or who have had a recent organ transplant. This isn't the long-anticipated booster programme. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, said that is on its way later this month.
Fortunately, social distancing doesn't apply when it comes to chickens. Martin Bristow is being treated for myeloma, a type of blood cancer. It's left his immune system weakened, and the past 18 months have been understandably hard.
Going to a pub or a restaurant is a difficult sort of thing. It's always like that way, for example, it's always that way. But obviously with COVID, it's even more pronounced because everybody else is now sort of potentially taking that disease around with them.
Around 40% of immune-compromised people like Martin have a weak response to 2 COVID jabs. Now, this specific group will be offered a third to see if it gives them more protection.
The benefits are uncertain. It's certainly not going to cause them any harm, but it may well top up their immunity levels to the extent that they actually get better protection from the vaccine. The data is pretty unclear in this area, so we want to be giving these people a third dose really as an insurance policy.
Up to 500,000 people are expected to be offered a third jab, far fewer than the 3 million or more previously classed as extremely clinically vulnerable. Will a nationwide booster campaign be announced to benefit them? It's still under review.
Today's announcement doesn't affect in any way whatsoever our preparations for the booster campaign. As I say, I expect it to start as scheduled this month, but it is subject to the final view of the JCVI.
But for those like Martin Bristow, another jab could be a ticket to greater freedom.
Even going to a football match, that might be something that I'd feel more comfortable doing. Normal stuff.
Hopefully for Martin and hundreds of thousands like him, it will be third time lucky.
And Tom is here to talk about all this. Look, we've discussed booster jabs many times. Yeah. Where does this mean for, what essentially does this mean for the rest of us?
Yes, I think the government is definitely keen to get an announcement on booster jabs out there if there is going to be one made for various logistical reasons. They've got a flu vaccination campaign to organise. Getting one of these things ramped up at the scale they need to do it is a huge operational challenge, and they want to get it done before any kind of winter peak in infections happen. So there's some urgency here, but still no clear decision whether we're going to do a wider booster jab campaign. Two reasons why you might want to. Yeah, we know it protects the really critically vulnerable with weak immune systems. A booster might help them, and that's why we're getting these third doses. We also know that levels of antibodies wane over time. There's a few studies from the ONS that show that's true. But what there isn't actually compelling evidence for is whether the ability to the vaccines to protect us from going to hospital wanes. There's not really strong evidence for that yet, and there's a basic fundamental principle in medicine here in the UK at least. You don't give someone a vaccine unless you know it's going to benefit them. And what the JCVI are doing, they're the committee that will have to decide on this, they're not going to call it until they see that evidence. Right now they're saying they're not, they still haven't got solid enough evidence to do that. They're still carrying on considering it. It's frustrating for the government, but we've been led by the evidence so far. Why change that now?
Fair enough, one might well say. Tom, thank you very much indeed. Now, after arguably the most humiliating foreign policy debacle for more than 60 years, the Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab certainly had some explaining to do when he appeared in front of a committee of MPs. He told them UK intelligence on Afghanistan indicated that Kabul was unlikely to fall this year. He was asked repeatedly about his holiday to Crete and at what stage in the crisis he actually set off. Mr. Raab would not say. He did, though, indicate he was setting off for Pakistan to join diplomatic efforts to rescue those still stuck in Afghanistan.
The sudden rise of the Taliban, desperate efforts to flee, women and children hauled out. These are the haunting images of the summer that led MPs to break from recess and summon the Foreign Secretary to explain. Dominic Raab began with an admission about just how wrong the intelligence had been on the speed of the collapse.
The central proposition was that given the troop withdrawal by the end of August, you would see a steady deterioration from that point, and that it was unlikely Kabul would fall this year.
For veterans like Derek Darin-Alagi, the toll of Afghanistan is personal.
It was so traumatic, and I still live with that image.
It was there that a 2007 blast lost him both his legs, and where he saw friends die. An experience that made it so hard to watch the Foreign Secretary today.
I know that there were contingency plans in place, but if they have acted early with the robust and to move a lot of people out of Afghanistan, we could have avoided the mess that we've seen on the news.
And it's that mess, the people left behind after the evacuation mission, that MPs tackled next.
I'm not confident in the numbers remaining, but we think that they would be in the low hundreds. Why?
What do you mean by low hundreds? Do you mean 110 sort of area, or do you mean 200, 300, 400?
They will be in the low hundreds, but I'm very reticent about giving a firm figure precisely because we don't know.
What they do know is that many remain desperate to leave, including this British man who spoke to ITV News.
I need your help, I need the support of my nation, but obviously I'm not getting that.
His case was raised today.
I texted you with more details of another case today, a British national who's in Afghanistan. What's the advice? Go to the border?
The Foreign Secretary spoke of sending British officials to neighbouring countries to help at the borders, 15 of them. And then he faced questions about his own travels.
What dates did you go on holiday? Not interested in what you did there. What date did you go?
Look, I made a full statement.
What date did you go on holiday, Foreign Secretary?
I've made a full statement.
I think your own personal transparency is important. What date did you go on holiday?
I made a full statement on it.
Derek thinks the Foreign Secretary should have delayed his holiday. But the bigger thing preying on his mind, and that of other soldiers, is what the past 20 years were for.
We went there for a purpose, to create stability and to restore peace into that part of the world. The question that keeps on ringing in my mind is that, was it worth it? It seems like nothing has happened for the last 20 years. And soldiers, we feel betrayed by the government.
That is one sentiment left behind as the Foreign Secretary heads tonight to Doha to speak to counterparts about the Taliban.
So one of the central questions remains, was this a huge intelligence failure by MI6 and the Defence Intelligence Establishment after the debacle of the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that never were? That would be very damaging again. Or did politicians just ignore the warnings? Well, let's talk to Anushka. Anushka, you've seen some documents tonight, I gather, which suggest the government was warned about the speed of the Taliban takeover.
Yeah, there was an intriguing document, Tom, that was actually raised at the committee today, and I have since seen it. It was a Foreign Office Principal Risk Report, and it is dated for the 22nd of July. And let me just read to you some of the things that are in there. It said that the US-NATO withdrawal was resulting in rapid Taliban advances. It said that could lead to a collapse of the security forces, a Taliban returning to power, and a humanitarian crisis. It also suggested that the embassy may need to close. Now, the government have said tonight that this was a standard monthly report and that it was really about assessing potential risk for an organisation. It said it did not contain intelligence information and that it would be misleading to say that it was at odds with their own detailed assessments. But clearly another headache for Dominic Raab as he heads out first to Doha. When he gets there, what he wants to do is prioritise the issue of Brits and Afghans who have helped Brits getting out of the country. But they're also going to talk about the issues around terrorism, around regional stability, and about how they can hold the Taliban to account on human rights.
Sounds a fascinating document. Anushka, thank you very much indeed. OK, among the many Afghans who helped or translated for Western forces, one man has a particular reason for hoping the Americans will get him out. Mohammed, one of those translators, helped save President Biden's life 13 years ago in a snowstorm in Afghanistan. He believes the president should do the same for him.
On a mountain pass in Afghanistan, 2 Black Hawk helicopters forced down by snow. On board, 3 US senators in Taliban lands. An elite team of American troops travelled in treacherous conditions to reach them, along with an Afghan interpreter. One of those stranded senators was Joe Biden. Now it is one of his rescuers who needs to be rescued. Mohammed, the interpreter, is trapped in Afghanistan. His service to America, a death sentence.
My message is to the President of the United States and his administration. They gone, has left Afghanistan, and they left me behind. And I request them, please do not forget me and my family. They have to rescue me and my kids from this hell.
The president has spoken of the trauma of that night on campaign trails.
And if you want to know where Al-Qaeda lives, you want to know where bin Laden is, come back to Afghanistan with me. Come back to the area where my helicopter was forced down with a 3-star general and 3 United States senators at 10,500 feet in the middle of those mountains.
How big of a success story would it be for the Taliban to find the interpreter that saved Biden?
Those who Mohammed served with are trying to get him out, horrified he was left behind.
You know, we risked our lives through that snowstorm, and Mohammed was right there with us. And I think it's an absolute crying shame that we're not having the same resolve to rescue our brother in arms. And I think he's earned it in his years of selfless service as an interpreter to our nation and to the United Kingdom.
The White House insists help will come.
Our message to him is thank you for fighting by our side for the last 20 years. Thank you for the role you played in helping a number of my favorite people out of a snowstorm, and for all of the work you did. We will get you out. We will honor your service, and we're committed to doing exactly that.
How achievable that is in a country controlled by the Taliban is why those Mohammed served with have such fear for his future. Emma Murphy, News at 10 in the United States.
Well, at the height of so-called Islamic State's terrifying violence in Syria, a group of 4 British men were alleged to have been part of a beheading squad. They were known as the Beatles because of their British accents. Well, tomorrow, one of them, Alexander Coty, is expected to plead guilty in an American court to one or more of the charges he faces there. They include conspiring to torture and behead American and European hostages. Rohit has the frankly immensely grim details.
Will you apologise to Bethany Hayes?
I find your line of questioning irritating.
Alexander Coty has always denied the allegations against him.
I've already said what I've had to say.
She wants to know where the remains of her father are.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
He was due to stand trial in the US, accused of conspiring to torture and behead Western hostages. But a brief listing filed at a court in Virginia late last night confirms that Coty is now seeking to change his plea to guilty, to admit to at least some of the charges against him. Alexander Coty was part of an ISIS cell named the Beatles by its victims because of their British accents. It included Mohammed Emwazi, known as Jihadi John. Coty left West London for Syria in 2012 and was captured trying to escape for Turkey in 2018 alongside El Shafi El Sheikh, who denies being an ISIS hostage taker. 2 years later, he was extradited to the US. Some of the group's victims were beheaded, filmed in propaganda videos published online. British and American hostages were among them. Nicholas Hennin was held captive for 10 months, then released.
On one hand, I'm a bit frustrated that I will not face him, but on the other hand, I very much expect that the fact that he pleads guilty will mean that he will answer as much as possible of all the unanswered questions that we are having.
But it's more than justice, but truth that the families of those killed are looking for. Some don't know where their loved ones' remains are, and there's a hope that Coty's change of plea might indicate he has new information he's willing to share.
Hopefully that may be part of an agreement in the cooperation, is that he will answer truthfully and he will disclose information and hopefully the whereabouts of where the remains of the hostage victims are, so that they can be brought home.
Coty has made some admissions before during interviews conducted in prison in Syria.
At this point, it was instructed to extract email addresses from them and open communication, basically.
But soon he will be brought to an American court to reveal what else he's admitted to. Rohit Katru, News at 10.
Back here, there was huge controversy back in June when the parole board said the double child murderer Colin Pitchfork could be released. Well, today, he was. He was convicted in 1988 of murdering 2 15-year-old girls in Leicestershire in the 5 years before. He was jailed for life for raping Dawn Ashworth and Linda Mann and strangling them to death. Today, Dawn's mother said life should mean life. It hurt her every day, she said, to hear people talking about their daughters and their grandchildren. Very different kind of story now, and it is hard to believe that it was only 3 years ago that Prince Harry and his new bride were bathing in the Windsor sunlight in the relatively uncritical adulation of the crowds. But then came Megxit and the infamous Oprah interview, and from an ITV perspective, the awkwardly infamous exit of our colleague Piers Morgan from the set of GMB. His attack on Meghan was the most complained about TV moment Ofcom has ever had to deal with. Well, today the regulator said his suggestion that Meghan was lying about her suicidal thoughts was potentially harmful and highly offensive. But it said the programme as a whole did not breach the broadcasting code because his views, which he had a right to air, had been strongly challenged by other contributors within it. To conclude, anything else, it said, would have a chilling impact on freedom of expression.
I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex's interview with Oprah Winfrey generated headlines far and wide. Meghan said her mental health living as a royal in Britain became so bad she had suicidal thoughts. She also said an unnamed member of the royal family had queried how dark their son Archie's skin would be. On Good Morning Britain, presenter Piers Morgan said he didn't believe a word she had said.
This is a 2-hour trash-a-thon of our royal family, of the monarchy.
His comments generated nearly 58,000 complaints, including from the Duchess of Sussex, who complained to ITV and Ofcom.
I'm done with this. No. Sorry, no.
The following day, he briefly walked off set. Today, the broadcasting regulator cleared ITV of any breach, saying this was a finely balanced decision. Mr. Morgan's comments were potentially harmful and offensive to viewers, and we recognise the strong public reaction to them. But we also took full account of freedom of expression.
Today, Ofcom has come out and emphatically endorsed my right to not believe what the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were saying. And I'm delighted that they've actually recognised what I said 5 months ago, which is actually, in a democracy, we have a thing called free speech.
Mental health campaigners say they worry about the possible impact of Morgan's comments.
I think the real tragedy in all of this is that at a time when so many people are struggling with their mental health because of the pandemic, will this encourage people to put up their hands and seek the support that they actually need? And I very much doubt that it has that effect.
Ofcom stressed Good Morning Britain offered balance to Morgan's views.
There is this claim that she felt suicidal, and I just don't think you can brush over that.
Contributions from co-presenter Susanna Reid and ITV News royal editor Chris Shipp were noted for the context they provided. Neil Connery, News at 10.
Some sport now, and the Paralympic GB team won another 6 medals in Tokyo today. 4 were bronze. There was a silver for Becky Redfern in the red cap after she led for most of the 100 metres breaststroke S13 final, only to be caught at the end by a German swimmer. And there was a gold for David Smith in boccia to retain his BC1 Olympic title. That makes him the sport's most successful British player. He needed all of his skill and resilience to fight back from 2-0 down to beat his Malaysian opponent 4-2. And don't forget, cyclist dame Sarah Storey goes for gold again in the morning in the road race, aiming for more golds than any other Paralympian in history. Now, those of us who are James Bond fans probably don't need our appetites whetted. The end of the month release of the much-postponed No Time to Die can't come soon enough. For everyone else, though, the producers have released another trailer. They want as many cinema seats to be sold as possible. Of course they do, but there's more riding on it than just one film. James Bond's latest mission is to save British cinema.
James? It's the question 007 fans have been asking since April last year.
Come on, Bond, where the hell are you?
Now they have their answer, and movie theatres need this Bond to be a blockbuster.
It is important because a lot of cinema chains in particular are waiting for this release because they're sort of hoping that this will be their saviour in a way.
How many others are there? Enough.
Despite a slew of big releases since cinemas reopened, UK box office takings are just half what they were by this stage in 2019. Black Widow's poor performance was put down to its simultaneous release on the Disney Plus streaming platform. Many films have bypassed the big screen altogether. But the movie industry, celebrating the Venice Film Festival this week, wants cinema to survive.
As a filmmaker, I don't believe that the history of cinema and cinema could be stopped so easily. So COVID will pass and cinema will continue.
No Time to Die needs bums on seats all over the world to be considered a success. But has this Bond missed the boat?
I think they delayed it too much. I hope it does well, but I think it'll flop.
Considering it's an English institution, a British institution, and everyone loves Bond, so yeah, I should think so.
Your best James Bond impression then?
Miss Moneypenny.
It's no laughing matter for the industry bean counters who'll be hoping that at the end of the month, 007 can sweep in and save the day once more. Nick Wallace, News at 10.
Finally, your starter for 10. Who is the world's best-selling author after William Shakespeare? The answer is Agatha Christie, of course. Yeah, the creator of Miss Marple died in 1976. Her last Marple mystery was published a few months afterwards. So what publisher wouldn't want to turn the money tap back on and create some new stories? That's what one has done, enlisting the help of some of the foremost female authors, including crime writer Val McDermott and Kate Moss of Labyrinth fame.
Dolly, what are you talking about? What body?
She's one of the most beloved detectives. With a keen ear for gossip and sharp mind, Miss Marple always solved the mysteries in the end. Her character adapted from books that have kept everyone guessing for more than a century. But now there's a plot twist in an Agatha Christie story even she may not have seen coming. New Miss Marple tales will now be written by different authors.
When I got the call, I was a bit kind of like, oh. But obviously, you know, I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan and specifically a really, really huge Miss Marple fan. So having been asked, I just couldn't resist, you know, the urge to get in there and play with those characters.
Ruth is one of 12 authors chosen to write new mysteries for Miss Marple to solve for the first time since 1976. A chance they hope to hook younger readers and pay homage to Agatha Christie, still one of the best-selling authors of all time.
Every month, hundreds of authors bring new stories to these shelves with quirky characters and unpredictable plot twists to entice new readers. But even after more than 40 years since her last novel, Agatha Christie's books sell more than 4 million copies every year worldwide. And for many, she is still their all-time favourite author.
Oh, I'd say on a daily basis we're asked for them, absolutely, and all kinds of different people. Particularly with Miss Marple, I think, you know, there aren't that many Miss Marple stories. So the idea that there will be some more to enjoy is great news.
The new collection, though, won't be published until September next year. Just enough time, perhaps, to revisit the originals and see if you ever figure it out before Miss Marple does. Sangeeta Lal, News at 10.
So guess how many copies she sold in all? 2 billion. How about that? Good night. Thanks for watching.
There'll be some light cloud early on today, but by lunchtime it will almost certainly clear. Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, very good evening to you. Settled and largely dry again across the UK through today, and high pressure remains in control over the next few days. So we stick with the same story, settled and largely dry, always the best of the brightness towards the northwest. You've really done very well with that over the last week or so. Let's get the detail then. By the time we get to the end of the night again, it's a largely dry, fairly cloudy sort of story. The clearest skies there across the bulk of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and here consequently the coolest temperatures, the potential for some mist and fog forming by the end of the night. So as we look at Thursday, we do so it's a very similar story. There's still a largely cloudy picture across the bulk of England and Wales. The cloud potentially breaking up though a little bit more than we've seen today. Again, the best of the sunshine towards the north and northwest. Temperatures west of Scotland not bad at all, 21 degrees cooler towards the east, but some warm temperatures potentially elsewhere as well tomorrow, 23 degrees in Portsmouth. That's it. Good night, sleep well, see you soon.
Heinz Seriously Good Mayonnaise sponsors ITV National Weather.